Hi everyone, today I thought I'd do another Path of Exile 2 video. Today I wanted to do some positives and, not be a complete negative Nancy, and just talk about some of the good things about PoE 2 that I'm enjoying and maybe some ideas for, I think maybe a couple of the problems. Now, for me, obviously a lot of discussion has been had specifically around Mathel's video, where he kind of came out and, well, within no uncertain terms, kind of said that the game isn't like super fun right now and the end game isn't super great. And obviously, as a respected community player and build creator and all of that stuff, he has very well versed opinions in the things that he's sort of played, looked at, thought about, and people respect that. And I like his builds and I like his content and I like his streams because he kind of gets it. He doesn't do drama. He just plays the game softcore for a fun way, tries to make cool builds, and I think he epitomizes what PoE is. Most of the stuff he talks about, I think, can be surmised by the fact that I've got top comment on his video with like 300, 400 upvotes, and I'll just read this out. When Mathel agrees that one portal is bad, nobody's going to call him out. Nobody's going to say, oh, he's a bad player, he's a D4 player, he's a games journalist. But if an average player calls it out, with no name, they're going to be slaughtered by streamers. I'm glad Mathel is raising this point. Full-time streamers don't really understand how annoying it is to lose a lot of time and progress. Frankly, if Mathel, a full-time rich PoE streamer, feels a little salty, imagine the regular Joe. This is a really good video. ARPGs are not the mechanical sweaty MOBAs. They are not a StarCraft. Most people want to unwind, blast and chill. Elden Ring is difficult and very fun, but you're just doing that once. It's a campaign game that you run through once. This isn't a game that resets every 3 months. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Now, that is not to say that I want the game to be PoE and for the game to be blasted through. But I do think, for example, there are some interesting ways that GGG could maybe look at the balance of one portal, because I kind of like it. Like, I kind of get it. I kind of understand the benefits of the system. I'm not completely naive to that. And I think there is some merit to doing things differently to PoE 1. I do think the end game is lacking. The difficulty is a bit strange, and maybe the skills and support systems and blah blah blah. I'll let other people talk about this. For me, I think one of the we'll get onto the positives obviously, but for one of the critiques I would say is I think the game, and this is always going to be a problem in a game with trade, is when the game has trade in it, things have to be balanced around trade. And if things are balanced around trade, it's balanced around the people that are using the trade system, right? So if people are using the trade system that are really, really good, high-level players that giga blast the game 24/7, the drop rate has got to be balanced around them somewhat, which I really hate. I hate group farming Magic Find. I hate the fact that some dude has a 10 mirror build because he traded for 10 mirror items. He's annihilating content and dropping divine orbs with rarity and exalts, and therefore all the drop rates get altered. Personally, I've always said that the number one game mode would be SSF with adjusted drop rates, and you can't transfer your league, you can't transfer your items, you can't sell them, they're forever locked to your account. I know GGG don't want to do that, but I think it would be a fantastic game mode if I was like, there's a little bit more essences, there's a bit more divines, there's a little bit more regals or whatever, or the tier 1 uniques are slightly better, in solo self-found, and and the reason is it's a 3-month reset. It's a 3-month reset, and I would love to play SSF and have a reasonable shot without such high RNG restraints because it has to be balanced around trade. There is another idea that I've been thinking of, and I'm just spitballing ideas here because I think some of them are okay. How do you feel about this? Let me know in the comments below. I think a really cool thing, and I know GGG won't listen to me. They don't know who I am, and they'll never do it. But if you like this idea, do share the video. I was thinking about this. What about when you go to PoE, you have gear slots, correct? Right? And you have, staff, 2 rings, amulet, chest piece, helmet, boots, gloves, belt, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 3, 6, 7, 8. You have 9. If you're using a one-hander, you have 9 possible gearing choices, right? What about, hear me out, if you could only have 3 traded items on your character at a time? Now, think about this. Initially, that sounds just pointless and a weird, random idea. But think about it. What this allows you to do is slightly raise the drop rates, because not everybody's going to have giga traded items. But it also encourages people to play. Because imagine you have found some decent rings in a chess piece, but you're not getting very lucky on the amulet or the bow and the quiver. So you go ahead and you buy those 3 things. Now you have 3 traded items, so the rest of your items have to be SSF, which slows the players down naturally. Now they have to interact with the crafting mechanics and they have to play the game a little bit more. But if, for example, they do get a random amazing drop, let's say you've traded, let's say you've traded for 2 really rare rings and a headhunter. The rest of your gear has to be SSF. Now, if for some reason you drop a headhunter and you're like, holy shit, that's not only is that amazing, but you have now freed up another slot for yourself to trade for. So now all of a sudden you're like, I actually might be able to trade for an amazing weapon. And I think limiting trade, not limiting the what you can trade or the quality of the trade, but just maybe limiting how much character power your character can have through trade, I think could have an amazing effect on the game. Again, it would make people utilize the crafting options. It would make people slow down, interact with things, do the progression that makes the game fun. And again, you've gone ahead and you've bought 2 amazing rings on trade, and you've bought your tier 0 unique that's never going to drop for you. And those 3 things are now locked in place. You can't trade anymore. Now all of a sudden you're playing, you still want to ID rings, right? You're no longer filtering out rings because you're like, well, I'm never going to find one better. Because if you do find one better, boom. Now all of a sudden you have another trade option. You have another trade piece unlocked. I just think it would be a cool idea. Just something I was thinking about last night. Let me know what you think. I just genuinely think it would be a cool system to not just like gimp trade and limit trade, but to limit the character power, because a lot of the problems just straight come from trade. That is where most of every single person's problem with the game comes from, whether it's crafting, whether it's drops, whether it's map layout, it all comes down to how can we slow down trade. Now, in terms of positives for PoE, there's a lot, right? I might not have spoke about them in great length because I'm just more focused on critique. That's something I've always done on this channel. But there are so many positives. I mean, personally, I know people dislike the layouts of the maps and that you have to backtrack and that it's not very fun. But for me, I'm not saying that the map layout should be a runaround zone for the rest of your life. However, there is pause for sort of thought that it does feel nice that the environments are big and they're not just this straight linear map. It makes it feel less of a game and more of something you're immersed in, wandering the world. People have said they dislike the tower system. They dislike the tower system. However, it makes me feel more immersed in the Atlas. Like, I'm clearing the tower that then unlocks this beacon that I can then put stuff onto the end game. It makes the whole thing feel connected and, yeah, together. And I like that. The pause feature is magnificent. The amount of times I have small lag spikes, or just the door gets answered, or or something just pops in, or you want to read something, or you just want to tab out, or you want to turn down Discord or whatever. Pause feature is fantastic. I think we should have the pause feature that console has. I don't know if anybody's noticed this, but console, you can pause when you open your skills. There's a lot of stuff that when you open the windows in console, it pauses. You only really get the pause button with escape. I think visually the game's great. Yes, there is a little bit of clarity with rares and stuff, but overall the visuals of the game are fantastic. I do like the fact that exalts are way more common and gearing is a little bit more difficult, because you can have you just feel a little bit more into the game. Like, okay, here's some items that are semi-decent and I want to regal. Okay, I've regaled them. These ones survived. Now I need to farm some exalts. And now with exalts dropping more commonly, you can have a go at crafting. And currently the crafting might not be as deterministic or as good, but I would bet that more people are interacting with the crafting system now than probably previous, because probably before people weren't slamming exalts, they weren't regaling, they weren't augmenting, whereas now they're a bit more common. It's kind of what you have to do. People are going to be more involved in it. I think that's good. And I do like the fact that because items are more rare, things do matter a little bit. You know, getting an alchemy orb is a nice drop. That can only exist if items are more scarce and resources are more scarce. You know, I do like the rune system. I wish you could unsocket them, but I do prefer this rune system than trying to get blue and red eldritch. Alright, it might not be as strong, but it's something, you know. I think the combination skills are nice. The only problem with combination skills is if they are not as good as a one button build, then you feel a bit dumb for doing combinations. But they're still fun, they're still nice to use. I mean, I am more enjoying PoE 2 this week than I was last week. You know, I'm getting more into it again, and I'm enjoying it a little bit more, and I'm a bit more positive about the game. I don't think it's all negative. I don't think that at all. I think it's a very, very good game. Probably just needs some tweaks, but I think a lot of the problems that people have are coming down to, whether they realize it or not, is trade. It's always going to be trade, because when you hit level 70, you can pretty much buy any piece of gear that you want. So you're just going to go ahead and buy a load of gear. So, for example, if you've got 100 exalts, you're infinitely more likely to have 9 pieces of good gear via using the trade site than you are making it, right? I know that sounds obvious, but obviously on the trade site, you can go and pick the exact things you want and buy them for cheap. So most people, unfortunately, will save their exalts and buy gear. They will then jump up tiers really quickly. Then they will hit that wall. My only concern with this game is I can see it heading down a route where you get to a point where your character is blasting tier 10 maps really nicely. Then the next thing is probably going to be doing bosses, and then you're going to need really, really, really good gear. And by the time you get to do the bosses and you've got really, really good gear, you kind of run out of things to do. That has always been the case in PoE. That's called like burnout. People will know what I'm talking about. Like, you finally farm your 9 pieces of good gear, and then you're kind of like, now what do I do? Which is why I think the campaign and basically your levels 1 to 70 have to be really, really fun, because after level 70, you're basically grinding for minuscule upgrades that you kind of probably don't need. It's just to make things a little bit easier. And so the progression should be fun. I'm not saying it should be easy, but it should be fun. A lot of my guild aren't playing PoE. They're probably not quite as hardcore as me into PoE. And, you know, I am a bit more there for the struggle, I'll be honest. Some people just want to have a little bit more fun, and I get that. But, you know, I do feel for them, and I do understand where it's coming from, if that makes sense. You know, I'll end on this because, you know, I just like to do different. You know, I'm not a PoE build guide. I'm not a total React Andy. I just like to talk to you, the community, and see what you think. So I'll leave you with this comment, and you can let me know what you think about the comment. Let me pull it up. A guild member left this comment, yeah, and I think it is actually kind of true. So this is what he said, and just before we read it, somebody said before, I don't think you should be able to overgear content. Content should always be difficult. I disagree with that. The whole idea of an ARPG fantasy is to get to a point where you're like, woohoo, I'm deleting everything. It might take you an infinite amount of time to get there, but I do think it should be possible, you know. Anyway, so my guild member left this comment and he said, what's interesting is all these streamers that tell people like to not moan and to get good and all of this shit. Every single one of them produces clickbait videos that are there to cater to the exact person they were quote shitting on. Top 10 ways to do this, best ways to do this, top 10 builds to one-shot this, best DPS, best clear, best crafting method. But the second someone comes in and actually says, hey, I want to craft good gear, have good damage, feel good, they get called casual, even though this is the exact person that watches them and they create content for and make a living off. Other than probably Quinn and Mathel, when was the last time you saw a top streamer not playing a meta or some OP shit that just smashes through the game? Like I said, if this game wasn't called PoE 2, they would be far more critical. They've been a bit protective over it because it's their main source of income and they need it to be good. Every single person that plays an ARPG wants the character to eventually feel strong. That's the point. It shouldn't be a terrible experience to get to that point, because once you get to the point of your character feeling super strong, there's no need to play anymore. I think that's very true, you know. I think that was a good point, because a lot of people do realise, I think a lot of people maybe don't realise, should I say, that yeah, these people that they're calling scrubs and causing casual and telling them to leave the game, that's probably most of their audience. And so I think there's just, I just thought I'd just do a little talking video. There's no real point to this. It's just me having a rant and a rave and a chat. But I like the Atlas system in a way. I think I feel involved in it. I think it's a little bit RNG. Maybe I don't like it as much as PoE 1, maybe I do, but there's something there. I can feel there's something there that I feel involved in it, and it feels nice. I think the game is good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bash the game. I think the game's good and there's a lot going for it. But with trade being there, it can make things feel a bit silly. And then if you choose to not interact with the trade system and use the crafting tools such as expedition and all of that stuff, they can often feel a little bit lackluster, and then you have to grind for your entire life because the drops rate isn't that high, because they have to be based around the fact you can trade. So I just think trade is always going to create a problem, and that's why I think the creative solution to trade is to just have a character have limited slots for traded items. I just think it would be a cool idea. Let me know. Imagine you've got your GG helm, gloves and boots. Those are your traded slots. The rest of the gear you have to find and create. All of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I actually found an amazing pair of boots. Or maybe they're ever so slightly less good. This is the key thing. Maybe they are ever so slightly less good than your traded item. And all of a sudden you think, well, actually, they might be slightly worse, but I could wear those, and now I could trade for a much better bow. Whereas if every slot is available to be traded for, unless your item is a clear upgrade, you will never use it, right? Anyway, that's just some thoughts. I think PoE 2 is improving bit by bit. It's early access. I think it's getting a little bit better. Yesterday I was having quite some fun on it, and I thought I'd just update you through the progression of myself going through early access, I suppose. Yeah, I'm having a little bit more fun. I thought I'd voice that.